The first thing we would like to do, to pick up on something that we used to do face to face, is go around the room and let everybody have a chance to say who they are and what they do and where they're from. And I guess the way we have to do this is that since everybody sees everybody in a different order on their screen, I'm going to just have to go down the list that I see and ask people in order. So this would be a good time to activate your videos, everyone, because when you say hello, people would like to see who you are, because that is part of the experience, is getting to know faces and people personally who may then become future colleagues and helpful people to you. So starting with the list, I guess I'm just going to go down the list. I'm first. My name is Donald Wardlaw. I'm an architect in Oakland. Mike Wilson.
I'm Mike Wilson. I'm the executive director of AIA East Bay. Welcome.
Alex Bergtraun.
I am Alex Bergtraun, Studio Bergtraun Architects, and we have an office in Emeryville.
Inez Lejaraya.
Hi, I'm Inez, and I have an office in Temescal, and it's Lejaraga Studio.
Okay. Carol.
Hi, I'm Carol McNeil. I'm in New York. I used to belong to the East Bay AIA a few years ago, and I like webinars. And I'm really an old architect and just working part-time now for a structural engineering firm that kind of came off of SOM a long time ago. It's called Gilsan's Stefan.
Okay, welcome, Carol. John Kerr.
Hi, I'm John Kerr. I'm with the Moe & Fawcett Company. Glad to be here today.
Ali.
Hi, I'm Ali. I work for the city officially, but right now I am on an unpaid leave, on an extended unpaid leave for different purposes, among others, focusing on my licensure exams and having a bit more flexibility to do some private projects, mostly remotely. I do work for a friend in Lafayette, mostly residential remodelings. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Alan Nudell.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Alan Nudell. I'm a structural engineer with Farrell Elsesser in San Francisco. I live in Berkeley, and I wanted to give a quick plug that I'm co-leading the tour of the Old Berkeley Art Museum on January 29th, which you can sign up on the AIA East Bay website.
Okay. Ari K.
I run Delta Arc Studios, which is an art, architecture, and technology firm in downtown Oakland. And I'm new to AIA East Bay, but very curious to learn more.
Great. Carol Shin. Unmute. Carol, you're muted. Do you want us to come back to you later, or?
While on mute?
Now you're good.
There. Carol Shen. I live in Berkeley. I'm 99% retired, although I help out friends and friends of friends with renovations now and then.
Barry. Barry.
Oh, I thought you said Harry, and I thought it was somebody else. Barry Wagner, architect, spending my time doing remodels, splitting it between remodel, ADU work, pocket doors, and building my little building next door in Berkeley.
Okay. Claudia.
Hi, I'm Claudia Falconer. I'm an architect. I am currently self-employed working out of my house. And I'm a former president of the East Bay AIA.
Cool. I'm not sure I can say this right, but Simbre Potter.
Hi, close. It's Simbri, like brie cheese. So Simbri Potter, I work for Banner Construction Management. Don't hold it against me. I am an architect, and I'll be honest, I saw Alex on the presenter list and I know him and it drew me in. So I'm looking forward to it.
Nice to
Okay.
see you.
Dietmar. Dietmar.
Oh, hi, yeah, Donald. Hi, I had my microphone turned off. Yeah, Dietmar Lawrence with TSRA Architects, architecture firm in Berkeley.
And Eddie Hall.
Hi, everyone. I'm an architect with MBH Architects and do a little bit of work on the side here in Alameda. And I was curious, so I thought I'd jump in and attend. I'm excited to see what you all have to talk about today.
Glad you could join us. Kirsten. Hello, Kirsten.
Hi,
There you
I'm
are.
Kirsten. I'm an architect in Oakland.
Let's see here. Mercedes. Mercedes is still checking in, I think. Nick. Pitch.
Pilch, yeah. Hi, Nick Pilch from Albany. Not currently in the industry, but who knows? I'm looking for my next thing. I have a keen interest in building and architecture, and was just looking at a job description actually for stop waste and program manager for a new project about the circular economy for materials. Very interesting stuff. And Mercedes Corbell was the architect on the renovations of my home. So look forward to hearing from her.
Mercedes, go ahead, say hello. Mhm. Say hello. You're muted. Okay, let's go to another person, come back. Peter M. Peter Morgard. Okay, another one, Sandhya.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, I'm an architect in Berkeley. I have a practice. I'm also on the list of historical consultants for City of Berkeley. So I do historic resource evaluations. And I'm loving all these amazing backgrounds. I need to get one of those.
Okay, I think just a quick check here. The only person that we have not got, oh, Kurt. Kurt, we're saying hello. You want to turn your video on and say hello and what you do and where you're from?
Hey. Hi, I'm Kurt. I'm an architect. I'm from California.
That's a very curt response. Let's see here. What else have we got? I'm going down the list. I think we've gotten everybody. Richard, did we get you?
No, you didn't.
Well, let's do it.
So I am sitting on a houseboat in Sausalito right now. In the background I have. And I am in the last couple of hours of my last architecture project before I retire from architecture.
Oh,
so I'm sort of in Carol's boat, so to speak.
Are you looking forward to retirement?
Yes, yeah, I am. I'm just doing some different things, and I'll call it semi-retired though, just to keep the door open.
Okay, for those of you who are not aware of it or new to the thing, Richard was the guy that founded this thing 25 or 30 years ago. So good luck on your retirement, Richard.
It actually was more than 35 years ago.
You're dating all of us unnecessarily.
Can I ask Richard a question?
Go for it.
Richard, are you using an artificial Zoom background because being retired and on a boat wasn't wonderful enough?
Well, yeah, this is sort of my alter ego. If I had a choice to be wherever, you know, Moorea near Tahiti is not too bad. Whose background had the stones on the Isle of Harris. I've actually been there, and that's where my people are from, and that is a frightening, yeah, Claudia's background. That's my worst nightmare.
Why is it your nightmare?
Oh, it's horrible there. It's cold, it's windy, there's nothing there.
The wind was blowing so hard I could hardly stand up. There is no land between this area and the Atlantic Ocean. This is the last thing.
So Richard, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Anyway, Richard and I, many moons ago, taught at the Building Education Center, all sorts of home building and remodeling things. But Richard also has a sideline that I don't know if everybody knows about. He does it in cafes and other places of ill repute. Are you still doing your fortune telling?
Oh. Magic shows.
Not that all of it.
Okay, I think there's one more name on the list, and that's Douglas. Douglas, you're muted. And no video. Okay, so I don't want to delay too long here, but let's see. We'll take a moment here for some announcements, and the first one I'll do, which has to do with our programs this year. So I'm going to share my screen. I try to share my screen. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble getting back into home. Does anyone else have any announcements while I try to troubleshoot this?
No, but I want to say hello. Mercedes Corbell in Oakland on a computer which has audio that works. Nice to see everyone.
Okay. All right, I'm back. So I'm going to share this screen. Apologies for the confusion. And what I want to do is share this diagram here, which is actually rats. It has to do with the fact that we have some stuff set up for next year. And so I want to show you the calendar for Small Firm Forum for next year. And just to let you know, in case you don't know, that all the programs that we do are put on by volunteers by the Small Firm Forum. So this is our calendar for next year. In the past, at our December lunch when we were in person, by the time January came around, it was full. But doing it with Zoom, it's a little trickier to get people to volunteer. It's harder to do. So this is where we stand. And so there are open meetings. Meetings can be presentations. You can invite someone to give a presentation. If you invite Marvin Windows, you can't have them come in and do a sales pitch for Marvin Windows, but you can have them come in and talk to you about energy standards, glazing, whatever you want to do. You can also do a conversation, pick a topic like how do we do accounting or whatever it is, show up with a couple of questions and the conversation takes care of itself. So first of all, I wonder if Peter Morgard is here and would like to say a word. Would you like to make a quick note about what's happening in February, Peter?
Sure. So I am hopefully going to be putting on a risk management presentation. I'm hoping to talk about, the 4 rules to manage risk, a little bit about what drives risk for architects and engineers, and just generally answer any questions people might have. So the program will be about 45 minutes, hopefully with 15 minutes for questions. And I was exchanging emails with Don yesterday. He could teach the program, but
no, not quite. I can show you how to keep a small bank account. Is Andy here? Andy Lee? Okay, so that's all the announcements related to Small Firm Forum. Does anyone else have an announcement they need to make or wish to make before the group before we begin our program today? All right, so we have 2 wonderful architects here today to show us our work. Andy and Ines, so Alex and Ines. And I think, Alex, you were going to go first?
Sure.
Okay, share your screen. Take it away.
So, good afternoon. So I'm Alex Bergtraun, Studio Bergtraun Architects, and Donald called me and asked me if I could do a little show and tell. And I thought that rather than talking about just, who we are and what we're doing, that I could talk specifically about the work we're doing at Sea Ranch. And we've been working there for about 12 years. And the first project we did was 12 years ago. And right now we have 8 projects going on at the same time there, and all in different phases of design approvals and in construction. So I thought I'd just kind of go through a series of things. I have a lot of images, so I want to kind of go through it, fairly quickly, and then I can answer questions after, I guess maybe after Inez's or whatever way you want to do that. So I'm not sure if all of you have been to Sea Ranch or not, so I thought I'd show a couple quick images. Sea Ranch itself is 10 miles by 2 feet, by 2 miles. It's 10 miles by 2 miles long. And so this map shows that if you took these and put them one at the end of the other, how long it is. And it's very interesting. The microclimates change from piece to piece all the way through it. And going from the ocean at the bottom of the screen to the mountains above. This is a house that we did for a couple 12 years ago. And it was where we started with this with our kind of journey with them. It was kind of interesting because I went to the first meeting. It's called a PSV, a preliminary site visit. And I met with the executive director there and with our client. And the executive director's name was Lisa Dundee. She started talking about how you go to these meetings and you are reviewed by people like George Holmesy of Esherick, Holmesy, Dodge and Davis, and Laura Hartman of Furneaux and Hartman, Mary Griffin of Griffin, Turnbull, Hayslip. And it was going down this list, and I went, wow, this is like, it's like being in school again. And it's kind of cool, actually, even though I don't always associate school with cool, but in this particular case, it's kind of amazing. And so my client looked at me and she said, well, if it's so fun, do you charge us for that time? And I said, yeah, it's not that fun. So the process has gotten more and more difficult at Sea Ranch, and I'll talk about that as we go through. This house went through a series of rules and reviews that we went through, and Sea Ranch has its own design manual book that they hand you when you walk on site. And the series of review processes are the PSV, as I said, the preliminary site visit. Then there's a conceptual review, which used to be optional. It's no longer optional. And you sometimes go through the conceptual review twice, maybe sometimes 3 times. And then you go through preliminary review. And if you get approved on the preliminary review, then you can start construction drawings. And so then you, in parallel, do your permit set for Sonoma County and for TSRA, the Sea Ranch Association. I'll say TSRA a bunch today. And then when you send in for permit, plan check, you're also in parallel sending it to TSRA again for their final review. And so TSRA acts, it's a homeowners association, but it acts as the planning department for Sonoma County for this area. So you start off and they give you a map showing the existing houses in the area. It's called a neighborhood map. And you are to take that and lay out your proposed house in the middle of that and show the views of the neighbors in relationship to it. And if you're going to be blocking their views, or if you're going to be blocked by their houses, and your relationship to the natural environment there. And then you're to show a bunch of pictures of the neighboring houses around it. So the first sketch I did on that house that I just showed you pictures of, I started in the left, I was on site, and it and I did a sketch on site showing that they wanted to have a house that had 2 masters and bridged by a bridge space in the middle, which is the kitchen, living, dining space, and then a music room above that. And so I took the sketch I did on site on the far left and then created the sketch in the middle, which was just a diagram to show that each of these wanted to have their own separate views. But when you look at the building in concert together, it becomes a rhythm of views. And so this is how that laid out. The orange are the 2 primary suites, and the blue being the bridge in between, and the entry is on the right here. The other thing is that all of the parking and if you do a garage and all the ancillary pieces need to be enclosed. And there's all kinds of rules about how to enclose the space so that it's kind of architecture and enclosure all become one compound for each of these houses. And they really want you to not see cars from the main drives as you go by. And you know, the other thing is that it's kind of an old school review process, and I'm an old school architect. So you know, our office does everything on the computer, but then what we do is we take the computer drawings, pull them off, cut sections or cut model shots, and then I sketch over them, and then we bring them back into the computer and we add color to them as needed. And it's a way of kind of talking the language of the reviewers that are there. This is that building that I was just talking about, and this is the entryway coming in. There's all kinds of rules also about the type of paving you can use, like all permeable, all drain rock, specific colors of the drain rock. But within that, they let you play with materials as much as you'd like. I just happen to like natural use of materials as much as possible. And so we have been using Core-10 a lot to let it age and show the aging of the building. Inside of the space, pretty sparse use of materiality. This was all radiant on integral color topping slab. And 3 and 12 pitch roofs tend to be kind of a nice pitch for that area. So these are all 3 and 12 pitch. These are the corner windows that worked for each of the bedrooms. So you feel like you're in your own separate world, but when you look at the house from the outside, there's a rhythm that shows it's all connected. So since that house, which was 12 years ago, was done, we have now been confronted with a whole series of other things that are going on with Sea Ranch. And I told the design committee, it's really nice that they have more rules because it was so easy to get through the design review already. And that was me at my most sarcastic. So one of the things that's come up is that they have these Asha assessments that you need to do. And I just want to kind of go through to let you guys know that if you haven't dealt with it, this is what's going on up there. Asha assessments are being imposed by Sonoma County, which are environmentally sensitive hazard areas. And so you need to hire a person to come out and do an assessment of each site. And even if it's not necessarily on an Asha map, they now want, TSRA is trying to cover their butts as much as they can. So they want every site to have an Asha assessment. And the problem with that, aside from the fact that it costs $6,000 to $7,000 for a person just to come out and do the assessment, the biggest problem is that they want to come out in June or in May when things are budding, so they can actually really see what's going on there. So we just had a person come out for an Asha assessment, and they came back and said that they found the root stock of a rare form of morning glory. And I said, whoa, morning glory, really? Okay. So that's the kind of thing we're dealing with. And so that's one piece. The other thing is fire hazard mitigation. As you guys all know, it's a disaster going on everywhere. But Sonoma County is going one step further in that the setbacks at Sea Ranch tend to be either 20 feet or 5 feet, depending on which property line you're looking at. And so you work off of that basis, and then you find out, from Sonoma County that they want 30 feet. So you have to then mitigate that and say, well, on these areas, we're using this type of roofing over this type of substrate, and you had to plead your case and hope that they'll let you use the setbacks that they gave you at TSRA originally. On top of that, TSRA is in this ongoing battle with the county. It used to be in 1964, when TSRA was established, they were able to take all that planning and environmental study stuff away from the county because they were doing it themselves. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year or over a series of years to mitigate fire hazards by clearing brush and all that kind of stuff. And there's nowhere else in the county that does that. But the county has something kind of with them that it's a constant butting of heads. And I've been dealing with Lisa Dundee about that. She's very frustrated. So on top of that, there's the TSRA administration, which is Lisa Dundee with her small staff that are being paid by the homeowners association dues, and trying to administrate these review processes that are just seeming to get more and more and more intense with the architects the majority of the architects I really admire and really like. The majority, notice that I said majority, and also the landscape architects, they're really awesome that are on the committee, but they tend to get to a level where they are pushing the rule discussions higher and higher and higher and saying, well, I kind of don't like a gable, so I really think you ought to do a shed here. And you kind of want to say to them, well, that's nice to hear that you feel that way, but where does it say that in the rules? And and then you look at some of the older buildings that were there done by O.B. Bowman and some of these guys that were really kind of out there, and you wonder if they were doing the same buildings today, would they even get through the design committee? So there's this kind of a push and pull that's going on. So that's my soapbox talk about what's going on at Sea Ranch these days. This is a house that I literally took these pictures yesterday. I was up at Sea Ranch all day, and that's one of the clients sitting on the bench right there. This was a remodel, and we fully took apart the house, re-sided it, redid the windows completely. I like to take corner windows and wrap them with the same materiality of the window itself. And after long discussions with the design committee, they let me do this. And so this was just yesterday. We had the final punch walk there, and some of the interior work that's going on here, trying to use materials in a way that are very what I call Sea Ranch, meaning not too finicky. The clients originally thought that they could use glass tile, and I said, glass tile is really kind of not Sea Ranch. And so I had this series of tile that are 4x16. We like to play with them, and that's what we did here. Also, the type of workmanship that's up at Sea Ranch is kind of amazing. There's a cabinet maker that I work with up there who is completely tatted out with 2 Doberman dogs, and he scares you when you see him, but he is the most amazing cabinet maker you'll ever meet. And I love working with this guy. There's that kind of discussion that goes on with Sea Ranch. The other thing that's going on is that the graphics at Sea Ranch are something that not only I, but everybody loves. Barbara Stoffaker Solomon, who did the original graphics, I think she's 93 years old. She's still kicking, and she's an amazing person. And they are redoing the lodge right now as we speak. This picture again was taken yesterday. This is all new logos, new siding. And I had a client who asked that we try and look at doing super graphics in her bathroom. And so she comes from a family that had a soybean factory, and they had these big burlap bags with the name of the family on it. And so we took that, blew it up, and created an imagery through the bathroom, including over the ceiling, that is blowing up the name of that client. And it was a lot of fun. So there's some really cool things you get to do at Sea Ranch also, that the clientele tend to be design aware, and it's a lot of fun to work with them. One of the things that also the design review committee asks you to do is to use imagery in your design process as showing where you're thinking of things come from. So when we were showing that, working on some of the house we're working on, we looked at condominium 1, we looked at the lodge, we looked at a series of projects to show kind of our shed forms. And now we're lucky enough that we have a house that's built there that I put that as one of our imagery pieces as well for our new house. So then what I thought I'd do is just kind of quickly go through a series of projects we're working on right now. I could go into serious detail, but I would bore the hell out of everybody. So I just want to kind of walk through some different ones and show you the diversity of what goes on there. This is a house that is along the bluffs, and the property is right here. And there's an incredibly ugly house right next to it, this open site right here. And so the house that we are proposing to do there creates kind of a courtyard space around. It has a lot of hearkening back to the house we did before, where each of these, this couple has 3 daughters. And so each daughter and their families that they're starting to grow and develop would have their own bedrooms with their own views coming out. We have the main space with kitchen, dining, living in the center spot, and the master bedroom suite over on the side, laundry, mechanical going on here. And then you go upstairs to a big loft that's over the central space. And since the winds come up fiercely along many times of the year, it's important that when you create courtyard spaces that you do them on the leeward side of the buildings and create that space. If you try to do courtyards on the windward side, it will never be used. So we try to create leeward side spaces. This is some of the imagery of that house we're doing. So you can see kind of the rhythmic moving around on the site and from the other side. And we start off with sketches that I do, and then we kind of work through the computer modeling, and then we take these and I sketch over them. This is a house that we actually are in the process of getting the final building permit. We got final review from them, and this we can start construction on in the next few months. It is on right off the golf course, and the clients did not, so the golf course is this way, and the clients did not really care about having a view towards the ocean per se. But the other thing that's kind of interesting is that when you work at Sea Ranch, they give you the predominant or dominant roof slope that they want you to have, because they want you to build your house in relationship to the other houses that are around, so you create a village feel all the way through, which I think is a great move. And this house right here happens to be a Griffin Turnbull Hayslip house that was just built a few years ago. And so we were building one right next to it. And yes, it is kind of intimidating to be building next to a Turnbull house. And so what we did on this is we created another courtyard space enveloping the house around it. And this particular case is a 1-car garage going down through, it's all connected, creating a gallery space around to the main living space. I think I have a floor plan here. Yeah. So all connected. The grandfather of the family is disabled. And so this is all connected with a ramp to be able to bring a person in from the car, or they can step down into this space. And again, living, kitchen, dining, living, and then bedroom space for the 2 girls here, and a second room for they have 2 daughters, and then a gym off the space. And there's a little galley space above that, which is this piece here. And this house is to have more of a barn feel to it. We've been doing some projects lately where we like to take the roofing material, which we do all metal roofs. It's a question if we use corrugated or if we use standing seam, and it depends on the project. So this was to be corrugated and give a real barn feel. And we take the roof forms and waterfall them right over so that the walls themselves become the same roofing material. This is a project that is up the hill, so it's completely, that was my alarm I set, so I tell myself to go quickly. This is on a hillside. It's very open, but there's a neighbor right here. And so we are digging the house into the hillside, and this whole garage here is to be underground. And then the house itself is here with a big shed form that takes all the solar panels on it, and an upper floor that has the master bedroom suite on it. And then just two other houses that we're working on up there that happen to be next door to each other. There's a, it's on a street called Bergtraun. So there's one house here. This is a courtyard, I mean, a cul-de-sac, sorry. And then there's a neighbor here who we have a feeling is going to be a total nightmare. And then down below is another property here, and that's the other house we're doing. So this couple, or a young couple, and they asked that we move the house as far to the edge as possible. And they have an Asha site, so meaning environmental sensitive hazard site. So we have shown the rings away from the environmental portion here to say that we're going to be at least 50 feet away, and we could be 100 feet away from the environmental impact area. And they wanted the house to be as high as possible to the limit so they can view over whatever the nightmare neighbor is going to do. And again, an example of where we take the roof forms and we wrap it down over. And the other neighbor just 2 doors down is really interesting because it's the polar opposite of those neighbors, that they, she's of Persian background and really wanted to have a courtyard house. So we designed the house around an enclosed courtyard completely. And you can see it here. So the doors can open up completely from the kitchen dining, roll the dining table out in the middle of the space, and then everything evolves around it. And we do a lot of kind of separated garages so that the entry journey starts from the beginning of the site as you walk through into the project. And some of the sketches that we did to show how that feeling will be inside the space. You can see a little bit of what's going on here. And so that's an overview of what we're working on right now. It's tough. It's times when I want to throw the computer and my drawing board through a window. But then I think about the trip up there, the time that we spend there, the trip back. This picture was taken yesterday as I was going up to the site. And I remind myself how lucky I am to be working here in my whole office, or just, we kind of pinch ourselves that we get a chance to work up there. So wanted to leave on that note.
It's amazing, Alex. Thank you so much. Very beautiful work.
Oh, thank you.
Ines?
Hi. How are you guys doing? Let's see if I can share my screen here. Share. All right. So I started my practice with several reasons that may be familiar to you. I wanted to do more fun work. I wanted to like the people that I worked with, and I wanted to have interesting projects. As I was working on this presentation, I recalled a lecture by Schumi at the time of the Great Recession, where he said, and I'm paraphrasing now, but now maybe architects will do interesting work. And at the time I thought, well, you know, really, we need to get paid. And how are we going to do interesting work if we don't have any work? You know, then the next opportunity that presented itself was to do an art exhibition at the Porsche garage in downtown Oakland for First Friday. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with this opportunity, but I like to collaborate. And so I asked around, and none of my architecture friends were willing to collaborate. However, I had met a contractor who had told me he had a steam bending wood setup. I barely knew him, but it seemed like an interesting process, and so I thought I would give it a shot. Fortunately, he agreed. I made a small model, and then we started experimenting in his shop. We had a very primitive setup. We used a box built of plywood, which we insulated and dropped a kitchen thermometer into. Below it, we had a large stock pot with water, which we set up to steam the wood. We would steam the wood for 2 hours at 200 degrees. And then we had a series of pipe fittings around which we bent the wood into interesting shapes. These we combined to transform into this wall sculpture.
Inez, I don't know if your pictures are showing up.
My no pictures aren't showing?
Yeah.
I see one.
I see just the first.
Oh, here we go. How about this? Does that work? Yes. Okay, here we go. Here you can see some oxidation marks that were left by the trays within the steam box. So we just, incorporated that into the sculpture. So then, of course, I wanted to try to incorporate this method of building into my architectural work. The next client I had, an optometrist, I was willing to, I was able to have her become interested in this construction method as well. Let's see here. So what she needed, was a new and because it is in Oakland and she wanted to deter shoplifting of glasses. Then she wanted it to, also feel open. So we had some low height elements. And then I proposed that maybe we could have some display areas in the waiting area so that while people are waiting, they could peruse the glasses. So then, using that design, we made a series of molds here and steam bent the wood, set the steam box up again, and basically I handcrafted these with the contractor together, made several molds for each of the shapes, and put this together. As you can see, it's a very artisanal process. Each piece does not come out the same as the next one. The variations in heat or temperature or dimension, or perhaps actual tree means that there's some variation. And so, but I think we appreciated that and thought it added texture to the design. Here's some more images of it getting built. In the end, we were using poplar, which bends very easily and is inexpensive and worked well for the project, but that did not go with the existing maple. So then we stained it this darker color here. For this house, this client came to me with this house in Montclair, sort of mid-century house in kind of bad condition. And they actually requested a Spanish style house with Spanish style roof. Fortunately, I was able to take the opportunity to educate the client. The client was of Mexican descent, and the reason he wanted the Spanish style roof was that it evoked memories of his childhood beach house. So I educated him and explained that there are many Spanish and Mexican architects who do modern architecture, and that his house, in fact, had elements of modern architecture, and that by using a modern design, he would not be relinquishing his Mexican identity. And so in the end, that project became this here. Here's some shots. He also worked for Webcore, casting abilities here to have Class A concrete here and here. And this is basically what helped moor this project into the hillside. So this project was a small house with this awful gloomy kitchen. The client came to me wanting to improve this. So in an attempt to make this tiny project more interesting, I went shopping for reclaimed wood here. And the kitchen we made with these reclaimed beams that you can see here. And then the contractor was able to find some reclaimed flooring, which we used in fact to make the cabinets here. The open shelves help make the tiny kitchen seem more spacious. However, the client was worried about the mess that he would make and hiding the mess. And so then we had these translucent panels, which could cover at least part of the mess, so he wouldn't have to be quite as neat and organized. So that's this little kitchen here on the top right. After doing that, he requested that I make a little bathroom here for this other bedroom. And eventually I redid this bathroom as well. So that first tiny bathroom is here. He was from London and used to living in tiny spaces. So he really wanted, this bathroom to actually be super minimal bathroom. I think this is maybe my only code minimum shower I've done. But using some natural materials, some limestone, some nice tile, some recessed lighting, and then plants to give it some texture. We're able to make an inviting, albeit tiny space. And then once he did that bathroom, his other bathroom he considered, even though he just recently redone it with some other, I guess, contractor or designer, he didn't feel it was up to snuff to his kitchen and his bathroom. So we redid the other one here. And then this is, again, these are basically all the wood you see here is from those large reclaimed beams that you saw me shopping for in the earlier slides. And then again, using natural texture. So we have the Heisa tile here and some limestone tile, and then the dog fur and the snake plant here again, sort of built into the wall. This is a client who is interested in improving the lighting in their bedroom. And she had a collection of so I recalled some spas I had been to in Budapest with the light streaming from the ceiling, and I tried to replicate that while using these star shapes that you find in Middle Eastern design. And I collaborated with a student of mine, Jeremy Luker, who was very knowledgeable with the CNC routing machine. So together we were able to make these star lighting for the ceiling. Oops. Oh, here we go. This is a project for wooden table baking. So this client, it's actually these two here up on the top left. They make alfajores, which are Argentine treats. They're like two short cake cookies with dulce de leche in between, which is a type of caramel. I, in fact, had made their bakery a year prior, the commercial kitchen. And then they asked me to do a cafe, which is their flagship store in I think it's like 24th and Broadway in Oakland. So this was very much a shoestring budget project, but again, we used some reclaimed wood, the concrete existing texture, some piece tile to give to bring it all together for this project as well. For this project, a client came to me as was an older client, both of them mathematicians, and they wanted an additional bathroom on their main living floor so they wouldn't have to go up and down the stairs. And there was only a tiny, tiny space below the stairs to make the bathroom. So, once I put the toilet there was no room for the sink. There was about 4 inches left. So I carved in under and took the opportunity to make this sink here. You can see the slant here of the part above the sink is from the stairs above. This actually was a relatively low budget project. And, you know, when I first came up with this and we shopped it out to see about getting it built, the sink was going to cost about $10,000 and the project was about to die. But I shopped around and found someone willing to do it for a quarter of the price because it really wasn't that complicated. And even after I'd gotten that, the client was like, well, what if we do a Home Depot sink? And I was like, well, yeah, I came up with some argument about cleanliness or whatever and was able to salvage that as well. So that's, so then, as part of this process, I said, well, you know, let's look at what else you could do with your house. If it's possible to expand or not. And, you know, as I started looking, they had this house that had been remodeled in the 90s. It was actually structurally up to code. This house was in San Francisco. And so I thought, well, okay, so structurally we wouldn't have to do a seismic retrofit to add space above. But, you know, you would have to add sprinklers. So I tried to find some way around the sprinklers, and I found that this part of the code where you know, if you have a mezzanine, you're allowed a mezzanine to count as part of the floor below. So I managed to have the third floor count as basically one room. And then for the fourth floor, basically it took 1/3 of those square feet and made that the mezzanine area here. And I managed to do that in a pre-app and get that signed off on. So then this was our initial schematic design model that we worked on. And, you know, it was all about, you know, we had this tiny space. It was 247 square feet. And how were we going to get it to feel large and expansive? So it's all about bringing the outside in, continuing the line of the floor, continuing the line of the windows with the exterior windscreen, and then continuing the line of the ceiling with the canopy here. And again, it was a somewhat older client, you know, beginning to have arthritis, whatnot. So they wanted a hot tub here for to help with their pain management. So this is how it turned out here. Oh, the one thing. So this original design, I believe we had a column here. And it dawned on me that perhaps using cantilever, we could get rid of that column. And so, oops, wrong way. In the end, the columns are shifted back. They're here, and then back here. And so this here is a large cantilever. It's actually all in wood. So the wood structure and the cantilever, the beam is upturned. So the cantilever at the same time as being the ceiling, it's also the parapet there. And then this bit is just sort of leaning onto it. And then you can see that the corner opens up like so. And then this is just the bathroom remodel, and then the bedroom. So this basically, we made one of the bedrooms, since they're older, their kids were in college and they came only occasionally. So this bedroom basically became a music room, which on occasion, if the kids were in town, then they would use the barn door to close it up and make it another room. So then, you know, in 2019, I had a baby, my second baby, and learning lessons from the first baby, I carefully slimmed down my practice. Unfortunately, soon thereafter, COVID happened. The stock market dropped, and my slimmed down practice became anemic. You know, I did manage to convince one particularly wealthy client to keep their project going. They told me they had lost a lot of money in the stock market. However, I convinced them that, you know, if the world went to hell, then everyone would be out of work, and that their project would suddenly go on sale. And if it didn't, then they could recoup their stock investments and they wouldn't care. And then, you know, a week after my that second child's first birthday, we had our shutdown. And, you know, I had then a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And, you know, as it turned out, it takes about 3 minutes for a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old to cover a wall with scribbles. You know, and holding down the fort, trading childcare with my husband, you know, making all the meals at home took a toll. So to manage stress, I needed a hobby, but the hobby needed to be accomplished in 20-minute increments. And I couldn't be going to the shop anymore because the shop had other people in it and we had to be alone at home. And this task had to take some, you know, small space in my apartment. And so I came up with this copper gilding. And I became interested in how the light reflects differently at various angles. You know, and this little exercise here is still, I think, a work in progress and may show up in my work later. In the meantime, those clients, they bought this house. They had a house in Seacliff originally that they had asked me to work, do a little feasibility for a garage, which, you know, didn't work out. And then, you know, they decided that the problem with that house was that it didn't have a view. So they bought this house. And this house is designed by Mark Mack and remodeled twice by Jensen and Macy. It has views everywhere. It has the Golden Gate Bridge, Angel Island. It's beautiful, you know, and you would think that at this point I have no project because they've bought a Mark Mack house, which has been remodeled by Jensen and Macy, and it's quite a nice house. However, you know, they weren't entirely happy with the windows. So this window, this is one of the windows that looks out onto the Angel Island view. But some of the other windows they also thought were too small. And, you know, they also wanted the space to be viable for aging in place. And as part of that, they also thought the garage was too small, or they had difficulty anyway parking their cars in the garage. So they wanted the garage to be enlarged. So the solution I found in the bits of wood, gilded wood sitting on my desk. What I decided to do is compress all of the view blocking items into a wooden sculptural piece that would be in the corner with the less good view. So here's on this side is the before. So here's the bathrooms. And then this, in fact, actually, I think in one of the remodels actually became multiple bedrooms here. So on the right, you see basically I've expanded and opened up the space here. And then this little nugget here contains the bathroom and the bedroom with a sliding wall here. So then this is basically the sculptural piece that I proposed. So this bit here is the Murphy bed. Embedded in here would be a sliding wall that would come out this way. This portion here would have some storage, and in here would be the bathroom. So most of the time, they're able to hang out in this room and partake in their activities of writing and making artwork. And then on occasion, when they have a guest, they can close it up and have a guest bedroom. And then from the outside, it looks like this. And like that. And then, you know, this project has many hurdles in front of it, I think similar to some of those Sea Ranch projects with neighbors and septic system and so forth. So we'll see how it gets transformed by that process, but this is where it stands now. And then, thank you, that's it.
we're actually done early, so would you guys be interested in taking any questions?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Sure, fire away.
I have a Sea Ranch question.
Mhm.
I enjoyed your humor about all of the planning hurdles and how many hoops you have to jump through. But the cynical and sarcastic side of me, which is, not exposed very often. Basically, if you back up a step from Sea Ranch, it all looks the same. So it feels a little bit like a show. The amount of, I don't know, review, the incredibly thick layering of review essentially leads to like uniformity. And I was just wondering how you felt. I mean, I get it. We all respect it. The place is a jewel. It's brilliant. The response to nature, the hedgerows, the wind, we all studied it. We all know to respect it. It's sacred. But I'm also just wondering, like, the process seems preordained, feudal. I don't know. Tell me what you think.
Well, interesting question. Well, yeah, I think there's a certain level of masochism that takes to be an architect and be an architect working at Sea Ranch. But the reality is that when you drive up the coast and you go by Bodega Bay, and then you go through, or if you go through beyond to Gualala and beyond, there's a lot of crap. And there's something very peaceful and serene about arriving at Sea Ranch, and you feel it in your senses once you arrive there, that things are calmer. And it's not about just the buildings, it's about the place. And the word place has been used way too much, but it really does create a sense of place when you're there, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of interesting because having spent my 5th year in Denmark when I was in school, you have the same feeling there. Everybody has their PH5, everybody has their Klimt lamp, and you kind of look at them and go, wow, you're living in almost, it seems slightly fascist in a way, but then you stand back from that and you go, that's pretty cool. And there's something very quieting about when you arrive in a country like Denmark, and the train station graphics are beautiful. The sense of order is just calming. There's something really, really nice about that. So I think the design review process could use some tweaking right now, especially since their administration can't keep up with it. You end up waiting for sometimes almost 2.5 months to just get answers back from the review committee, because they're so afraid of liability with some of those neighbors that the processes have to be guarded and it has to all be in writing. And I'll say, no, in fact, a couple reviews ago, I actually stopped the review committee and just said, this really bugs me. And I talked to Laura Hartman about it. And I said, really, this is not a discussion. This is a presentation and a critique, and there's no discussion on it. And I don't think that's helping the architecture. And Laura heard that. And so then the next time I came up for another project, she said, so Alex, you're the one who likes to have discussion, right? Well, let's go for it. I said, you know what? I'm ready. Bring it on. And that was the healthiest conversation we'd had in a while. And one of the reasons for that was because the clients were not at that meeting. They couldn't make that particular meeting. And so everybody kind of let their hair down, and we just talked about architecture. And how rare is that, So I thought it was I thought it was kind of refreshing to periodically have that conversation. But it depends on who's the reviewer, and some people know how to review a project, and some really don't. And so that's the bite to the thing. But as far as a long answer to a short question, it's like the reality is that in the end, I think you get a better product when you have a chance to review things. Oh, and by the way, it was interesting is I was driving along there like a half a year ago, and I went, who the fuck did that project? And it was like, oh, that's Tom Kundig. And I found it was a Kundig project, and I love Tom Kundig's work, but the house that he did at Sea Ranch sucks, okay? And it's not Sea Ranch. And I thought, okay, he got a pass because he's Kundig. And I asked Lisa about that. I said, so how did that get passed? If you guys are so gnarly about this thing. And she said, yeah, we don't really talk with Tom Kundig anymore. And Tom Kundig doesn't talk with us very much anymore. And so that was kind of a blip in their process. And if you go through this, if you go through Sea Ranch, you'll see a lot of blips. And what the design review committee is trying to do is to take that sine wave that used to be there and soften the sine wave so that everything has a general sense of purposeful design through it all the way through. That's my answer.
I have a question for Ines. First of all, Ines, I thought your work was very beautiful. What was kind of striking to me was that you have a focus on form and material that is really zoomed in. I mean, a lot of architects have that as part of their repertoire, but I mean, you're really getting everything out of it. But my question was just kind of funny because here we are, a group of people, we're all architects, we're all out trying to do this stuff. We come from different backgrounds. So my question is, when did you first want to be an architect, and was architecture your first choice?
I don't know. I probably, came back and forth to architecture throughout my youth, I suppose. And I guess, actually, when I got to college, I actually wanted to be a dancer and not an architect anymore. And then I discovered that was, just not going to work at all. However, because it's very low pay, you basically have to torture yourself to do it. So, I think I landed on architecture because it was a way of combining the art with something more practical. And so I guess maybe that's what you're seeing in my work now, is that I take these forays into sort of artistic ventures, and then I try to bring it back into the larger work.
Awesome.
Can I say one more Sea Ranch thing? You there?
Yes, go for it.
Well, so I was being deliberately provocative with my question, which, anyone here who knows me wouldn't be surprised by. But I didn't say the part, well, actually to both of you, to Ines also, the work was beautiful that both of you showed. And Alex, that includes your house. I mean, when I said things look the same, we all know they're not. There's plenty of cheesy versions of Sea Ranch going on up there, and yours is, the one you and Michelle did is like definitely a cut above and really well resolved. So I don't want anybody to think I don't appreciate that, and I don't want you to think I don't notice how good it is.
I know you, Kurt. It's not a problem.
Okay. And Ines, I thought that addition was, I want that. I want to live in that room. That I would, if I were your client for that house, I'd be like, well, you kind of ruined the rest of our house for us because we don't ever want to go in the rest of the house anymore.
Just remodel the rest of it.
Yeah.
I wanted to add to that about Inez's work that I really, really appreciated the fact that you had a moment in your practice where you had to kind of think outside the box and figure out, what am I going to do now? And you pursued your art, and your art then informed your architecture. And I mean, how cool is that? That's what it's really all about. We had a discussion all together a few months ago about the collaboration of art and architecture together. And what you showed was basically that. It was very cool.
And I wanted to add that the remark about when your client said, well, why don't we try a Home Depot sink? That we have to acknowledge that Inez has remarkable skills of communication and education and selling the art to clients. So hats off to you. Really wonderful.
Oh, if I can add one more comment to that, the whole aspect of using materials that had a previous life and bringing them back to life and creating a story for, you know, your client's house that brings on a story of that material from a previous life is just a really cool thing. I mean, over and above the sustainability of that, which obviously is important, it's also storytelling. And in the times that we've had a chance as an office to bring in other materials or bring in objects that had a previous life into the new house projects with our clients just get enriched by that. You know, they just, you can tell that now it's become more than a project. It's become part of their life story. So that's also really cool.
To ask Inez a question, if I may. One of the things that I have found over the years is Title 24 concerns whispering in my ear, and as a result, I think I may have been held back in some of my design approaches. I'm just wondering that in your Sausalito project, where you have this amazing wall of glass, what sort of thoughts did you have about energy, and you know, is that a concern, and how do you deal with that?
So on that project, it definitely was a concern, and I hired Loises and Ubalodi. Susan Ubalodi was one of my professors at Berkeley. They're energy consultants or whatever, and they you know, have this method of going through and making projects work. They, you know, we basically looked at I guess they propose several energy, I forget what they call it, like a little kit of parts or something like that. So if we pick a suite, like a suite, so you can pick, you know, options A, B, D, and E, and A, B, C, and F, and all those together will help you pass. One of the big things helping that project pass is that it's an addition and it's not that many square feet. So that helps us go into a certain particular part of the code, which I guess is less stringent perhaps. You know, of course, we'd need very high energy glass and, you know, and a bunch of other things to make it happen. I guess my general attitude is to design the project that I think it should be first, and then try to overcome whatever obstacles come my way, whether that's, you know, the client or the energy code or the structure or whatever it is, you know, and then take it from there.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. Also compliments to both you, Alex and Inez. I agree, beautiful work. Inez, in the process of choosing, you know, reclaimed lumber or what other material that you might find out in the world that you want to use, I mean, maybe it varies, but do you tend to sort of just buy it and hold it, or talk to the client and this is something we'd like to incorporate and then the contractor buys it, or how does that work for you?
So I guess in that particular case, you know, it's that contractor was the same one that I did the Bentwood project with. And so, you know, now actually, you know, I barely knew him at the time of the Bentwood thing. That was just like, okay, I'm going to try this, see if it works. You know, maybe this person's awful, maybe they're great, who knows. But, you know, we have since then, you know, we have a pretty strong relationship, and we actually went shopping together. And then we had, you know, basically, he may have already had some samples from some other project. You know, it's possible that we were confident enough that like, you know, the salesmanship of just like being like, hey, this is what we're doing, and that they would just pay for it. You know, that wood wasn't that expensive at that time from that vendor. So that
great.
That would have also been possible. I can't remember exactly.
Thanks.
I'll throw in a question. Speaking of Title 24 and energy efficiency, there's, which is a keen interest of mine, there's a movement of some to push distributed alternative energy production, things like PV panels and wind turbines, et cetera. And I'm just curious, Alex, if you encountered any talk of that at Sea Ranch, because it might be a perfect place to have that sort of infrastructure, but then again, it's going to clash completely with design concerns, especially wind turbines, but you know, PV panels too. It's very hard to integrate them into the sort of designs that I saw. So do you have any thoughts, or did you encounter that at all? Or maybe people at Sea Ranch just aren't thinking about that sort of thing at all?
Actually, we encounter on every single project we do up there, and we have PV panels on every project we do. We're doing a house that I didn't show you guys, where the entire main portion of the house faces due west, and we had a detached garage on it. And even though the dominant roof slope had to be towards the west because of the other houses in the area, I turned the garage slope to be due south so that we could have better access to solar. And I explained that to the design committee, that we were specifically doing that for solar, and they were totally good with that. And you know, there's been discussion about using Tesla roof tile as an alternative to PV panels, and that's more problematic because the glare of those Tesla tile is kind of tough. It's an issue. And we've done two houses, one in San Carlos, that were using Tesla tile, where, you know, like in a place like San Carlos, that's okay. But at Sea Ranch, that's a bigger deal. That's a more problematic thing. But at the same time, Sea Ranch is actually very interested in people using alternative materials. And if you can define the reasoning for your material usage, they're all over it. So it hasn't been a problem. We did a house up in Eureka where we used micro hydro and tapped off of the local creek that was coming through there and powered the house off of micro hydro. That was cool, but it's kind of amazing that when you deal with some of these technologies, you're kind of not only working with nature, but you're at the whim of nature. And so a couple of years after we had put the micro hydro in, it completely, the entire system got blown out when there was a massive onslaught of water coming down that same creek. It took the entire system out. And that can happen with wind turbines also. You have to be very careful about your usage of some of these technologies and where you can do them. Wind turbines, we have not had that situation up at Sea Ranch, also because there had been discussions about it affecting bird populations. And that's a really big deal. I mean, just like yesterday when we were up at Sea Ranch, we saw hawks everywhere. I mean, it was just amazing. And so at what point does the technology get in the way of the environment also, you know?
So things like PV panels, were they built into the design guidelines from the beginning, or is it just that you try to put them on less visible parts of the roof, or they, you know? And I'm very curious about incorporating that into how that affects the design element of the.
That's a really good question. So that house I showed that we had just finished remodeling, that was going through the punch list, part of what we did on that was we redid the entire roof on the house, and we put on corrugated metal. and where it used to be asphalt shingle. And so at that moment, we also, the clients were excited about putting PV on it. So we laid out a PV array based on what the company said would need to be the thing. And the design committee came back and said they wanted to have the geometry of the panels more reflective of a design that they would feel more appropriate. And I said, you're kidding me. You're making us do less panels and be less efficient so it looks better? And they said, yes. So I thought that being very hypocritical, and it really bugged me for a while, but I got over it. But it's like, wow, you're either into PV or you're not, but don't tell me to reduce the amount of panels because it's bugging your design aesthetic. Seriously, and we're not talking that it was sticking out over the roof slope or anything. It just had an asymmetrical layout about it. I thought, wow, that's off the charts. So I think that's
I actually noticed that in your. No, I noticed that in the project you showed, it actually looked quite elegant. You had I saw the PV panels in that project that you showed, and I think it looked elegant in part because of how it was displayed. And I think maybe it's the color, because the color of the roof you got to match the color of the panels, and so you kind of barely notice that they're there.
Yeah, they actually ask you to match the coloration. And one of the other things we did on that project was we used PV and we used solar thermal, and we thought that the solar thermal could heat the radiant. And after we did that, the contractor came back to us and said, please do not ever use solar thermal again, because it is so inefficient. You would be better off just going all more PV and then balancing it that way. So, and that's a whole nother discussion about how, going all electric. If you have radiant on a house and you're all electric, that's still not figured out yet. How to do all electric radiant. Those systems don't work for that yet. So I think it's a work in process on that.
Thanks.
Hey, Alex, did Sea Ranch get involved with your landscaping? Exterior?
Really good question. Yeah, and we tend to do a lot of our own landscape design. We once brought in a landscape designer who was more of a landscape contractor on one project, and I realized that we can do that ourselves. But we have landscape design background from many years. You were given, depending on where your house is located at Sea Ranch, you're given a specific criteria of native plants that you can use. And Donald Linden has actually taken the entire Sea Ranch, divided up into 11 zones, and you're handed, based on where your particular house is located, that set of plants for that area. And you can pick from that. And I am totally good with that. I think that's actually wonderful. And so not only do they look at your landscape plant choices, but if you decide to bring in rocks and boulders, they look at your boulder usage and how does that work? I had a whole discussion with one of the landscape architects on the committee about how rock and boulder forms really are at Sea Ranch compared to other places. It was very interesting. I think sometimes the landscape discussions are way cooler than the architecture discussions. So
I have a question for Alex. Very interesting, the perspective you give us on Sea Ranch and the way you tied it into what you experienced in Denmark and so forth. So when you zoom out and look at all of this, do you see Sea Ranch as something that should be seen as a unique experience that should be just for what it is? And do you see it as something that is really not practically applicable to other areas that people live in a general sense?
No, I've learned a lot from the experiences we had at Sea Ranch that we apply to other projects, no, for sure. And we're doing a couple houses up at Tahoe where there really isn't any of this design review, at least with the project that we're working on. And, we just applied the same principles up there. No, I think it's a good thing.
I didn't answer that question. I didn't answer that question quite right. What I was really getting at was whether the level of design review, do you think that it's generally practical, or you think that should just be left for certain enclaves of special work?
The latter, definitely the latter, especially if you don't have an administration that can keep up with the review process. If you go through a review and you have to wait 2 months to get a letter back from that review, which ends up being a closed review, the only review that we can actually talk at is the conceptual review. After that, all the other reviews are done within the committee, and you hand in your submittals, and you're not allowed to speak at those. If you have to wait for 2 months between each of those things, and let's say you have to go back a couple times on any of those reviews, you will kill your project. You know, the first house we did, it took a year to get the review approvals, and we thought we were doing pretty well. Now it's looking like it might take longer than that. And the other thing is that with COVID, none of these presentations have been able to be in person. And for an old school group like these guys, like if you have Tito Patri and Laura Hartman and Mary Griffin and these guys all together, and you can actually talk to them face to face in person, that's a hell of a difference compared to a Zoom call. And it's really too bad. So the short answer is some review that holds is good, but after a while it becomes kind of inconsequential. And it's too much.
Okay, we're right about at our end. Inez and Alex, I'm sure everyone here and who was here, just very grateful for the time you spent with us today. It was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, good. See you next time.
Really nice work, you guys. Inspiring. Good, really nice.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy I was able to come. Really awesome work.
All right. Take care. Thanks a lot.